Well, good afternoon. We're continuing to monitor Tropical Storm Ian. That will become a hurricane very soon, certainly within the next 24 hours, and it will likely be a major hurricane very soon. It's currently about 660 miles south of Key West. It's also south of Cuba. It's important to point out to folks that the path of this is still uncertain. The impacts will be broad throughout the state of Florida. Don't get too wedded to those cones where they have the dot going in landfall. I think right now they're projecting on the National Hurricane Center to go enter Florida about Taylor County. And it's important to know what that means. That really is an estimate of a variety of different models. There are some models that want to tug this thing more deep into the Florida Panhandle. There are also some that want to bring it for landfall in the Tampa Bay region. So from the Tampa Bay area all the way up to Escambia County along Florida's Gulf Coast, you could potentially see it make landfall in any of those places as of right now. Now, as this goes, there'll be more clarity. They have nudged it further west as they've looked at this over the past 24, 36 hours. But just because that dot is in a particular place, it's too soon to say that there's not going to be a wobble or there's not going to be any type of curvature back into the Florida peninsula. And basically, you have one model is taking it there. It's the European model. The American model is taking it further west. And what the National Hurricane Center does is basically try to come in the middle of what the models are out there. So expect heavy rains, strong winds, flash flooding, storm surge, and even isolated tornadoes. Make preparations now, and I know a lot of people have been doing it throughout the state of Florida, and the things that you should be prepared with are things like food, water, batteries, medicine, fuel. Anticipate, particularly the closer you are to where the eye of the storm makes landfall, anticipate power outages. That is something that will likely to happen with a hurricane of this magnitude. Anticipate fuel disruptions. That's something that could happen with a hurricane of this magnitude. And also anticipate that in certain areas of the state, if you are in a very vulnerable area, there may even be evacuations that are issued. So listen to your local officials and heed those warnings, but just prepare that with a hurricane of this magnitude, those are things that will likely to happen, and it's more likely to happen, obviously, where that is making landfall. For those folks who are new to the state, who have not experienced this yet, and I know we've got a lot of people that have moved into the state of Florida, just make sure you make your preparations. Also make sure that if you're doing things like using generators, that you're using those properly. Those generators cannot be operated inside your structure or your home. The exhaust has to go outside. If it's inside, then that could be something that is fatal. So please, if you're going to use a generator, make sure that exhaust is going outside your residence. We have declared a state of emergency for all 67 counties, given the uncertainty of the path of the storm. We've done things like waive weight restrictions for commercial trucks. We want to ensure that adequate resources are able to be brought into the state of Florida. We've also authorized emergency refills of prescriptions for 30 days. And so if that's something that you need to do, you have the ability to do that. Florida Department of Emergency Management is working with all of the fuel and the utility partners throughout the state of Florida. Once this storm hits, there's going to be a need and a strong effort to get the power back on for as many people as quickly as possible, and they are working with those partners. We have activated the Florida National Guard. They are activating 2,500 guardsmen at the moment, and if there is a need for more, then we could do more, and our state EOC is at a level 1. I want to thank everybody for working hard, not just here at the state of Florida, but also at all our local counties who do a really good job with emergency preparedness and emergency management. We're going to keep monitoring the track of this storm, but it really is important to stress the degree of uncertainty that still exists. And so anybody from Tampa Bay all the way to Escambia County, there are different tracks that would take it into any one of those places. And then I would also say to other Floridians, even if you're not necessarily right in the eye of the path of the storm, there's going to be pretty broad impacts throughout the state. You're going to have wind, you're going to have water, there could be flooding on the east coast of Florida as a result of this. It's a big storm. So just prepare for that and understand that that's something that may happen. I'm going to have Kevin Guthrie come up and give an update from the emergency management.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor, for your steadfast leadership and unwavering support to the division as we continue the preparations and our response to Tropical Storm Ian. Tropical Storm Ian is expected to become a hurricane later today, tonight, possibly tomorrow morning, and reach major hurricane strength by Monday. Regardless of Ian's expected track intensity, we are preparing for dangerous storm surge. I would just mention that these models, while it all has Ian going up to a Cat 4, that envelope of water will not stop due to high pressure or dry air. That has no bearing on storm surge. So we could see a situation where we have Cat 4 storm surge and potentially a Cat 1 or 2 hurricane landfall. At this time, the division is currently holding twice daily calls for all 67 county emergency management officials and state agencies to coordinate proactive actions and needed resources ahead of this potential storm. The division has received to date 122 resource requests for Tropical Storm Ian from our county partners. Requests are currently being processed and are either en route or being mobilized at this point. This includes the coordination of resources such as trucks of food and water, generators, pumps, and emergency personnel. We are identifying potential logistical staging areas and working with our counties on points of distribution to ensure food and water are readily available if the county should request it. Specifically in the area of food and water, we are loading, and by today we will have loaded 360 trailers with more than 2 million meals and more than 1 million gallons of water to be ready to be sent into impacted areas. Throughout the hurricane season, we have been urging Floridians to make a plan, build their disaster supply kit, and remain vigilant. If you have not done so, please go to our website at floridadisaster.org to start doing those things immediately. I encourage all Floridians to not only continue these preparedness efforts, but also take the time to know their zone and know their home. In Hurricane Irma, we over-evacuated residents by nearly 2 million people. Please take the time, go to floridadisaster.org/know, that's KNOW, to find out what evacuation zone you live in. If your home address is not in one of the labeled colors, you do not live in an evacuation zone, and therefore you need to know your home. Does your home have the ability to sustain tropical storm force and/or hurricane winds? Do you live in a manufactured home? Are you in a low-lying area? If you're in a manufactured home, low-lying area, or some other structure that cannot sustain winds, you will need to evacuate when your local emergency manager asks you to do so. However, if you are not in an evacuation zone and your home is able to withstand winds, you may choose to shelter in place. You need to be prepared for sheltering in place. You may lose power for multiple days. Make sure you have enough food and water that you can prepare while you're sheltering in place. Of course, for all this information and more information, you can please visit the division's floridadisaster.org webpage. Follow us on social media, on Facebook, and at FLCERT. Again, Governor, I want to thank you for your steadfast leadership in supporting the division. Thank you very much.
Hey, anybody have any questions for any of these guys? We got Tom McCool from FEMA. Of course, you guys know Jim Eifert.
Yeah, can we get a comment about the President's response so far to your request for assistance?
We appreciate it. We're thankful. I spoke with the FEMA Administrator, Criswell, I believe on Friday, and they stand by ready to help. So we appreciate that quick action.
Isn't there a regional states aid agreement? Has that been invoked yet? Or?
I believe the regional agreement you talk about is the Emergency Management Assistance Compact. That is activated right now. We are certainly resourcing some resources from around the country, although not through EMAC. We're doing it through the Federal's resource request form. Do you want to talk very briefly about the? I'll just go ahead and take it. We have already requested urban search and rescue teams to be on standby. I know FEMA is mobilizing those. We have already requested medical transport units, and FEMA has already filled that mission, and those units are moving into the Orlando area right now from FEMA. And if we do need regional assets from other states, those states stand by ready to assist. I've already received calls from every state in the Southeast region, and they are ready and willing, ready to go and help us here in our time of need.
Governor and/or Mr. Guthrie, have you talked to FEMA at all about the reimbursement rate, how much they're actually going to cover? I know with Michael, because it was in a poor part of the state, they did 100% coverage.
So the default is the 75-25 to start, and then the request would have to be beyond that, and that's something that we would be prepared to make, of course, if we end up having a really significant impact. And that was instrumental in Michael, because we got 100% reimbursement for 45 days, and then we got 90% for every day after that. And you had a Category 5 hurricane that leveled communities there. So you had places like Mexico Beach, their annual budget, I think, was $3 million, and their debris costs were $100 million or something. I mean, so obviously they needed that support. But so we will be requesting whatever we need to make sure Florida communities get through this. I would just stress again, though, these they're going to put out another advisory at 5 o'clock. They may move the track a little bit. You see that eye of the storm that they have. They'll put it on the news and everything, and consider that. But just understand that there are some models that are going to have it go right into the Florida Peninsula to kind of take a right turn, and there's others that have it go more northern track to hit the Florida Panhandle. And so there's uncertainty still there. The models are not in agreement. They have moved it west, I think, over the past 2 days, and so maybe that'll continue. But just don't think that if you're not in that eye, that somehow you don't have to make preparations, because the last thing we would want to see is it start to really bear east quickly, and then have folks who are not prepared. So it's better to be prepared and then not have to use those preparations than the opposite. It is also true in speaking with the meteorologists, because of the atmospheric conditions, the more north it goes into the Panhandle, it is expected to weaken by the time it would make landfall. It would no longer be a major hurricane. Now, it would still have significant impacts, because you're talking about a lot of rain, you're talking about surge, you're talking about flooding. But I know a lot of our friends, particularly in Bay County and beyond, they dealt with a tornado 4 years ago with Michael, and that just caused huge destruction from the wind. So we'd like it not to hit Florida at all, but if it did do that, it would likely be more of a water and flood and storm surge event, rather than the type of buzzsaw that we saw with Michael 4 years ago, where any building that was not really sturdy was basically getting flattened in the line of that. I think it would end up making landfall in a little bit different type of storm. Okay, we may come back later today if there's anything to report, and then if not, we'll definitely be back tomorrow. This is bottom up, so we're working with the local EMs. They're making those determinations. They know if we feel strongly that they're not doing something that we think, then obviously Kevin will work with them to get on the same page so that we can do it. As Kevin said, with Irma, there was an over-evacuation, and so when you put people on the road, that's not cost-free. I mean, there's traffic, there's fatalities on the road, so you want to be very careful about doing that. At the same time, if you have vulnerable populations in like a Pinellas County, where you have mobile homes, senior facilities, you want to make sure that they're given the safety. So those are all the factors that are looked at, but it is a bottom-up thing where Kevin is working with the local EM directors. And what we would just tell Floridians is, as Kevin said, if there's an evacuation notice, the cops aren't going to come and drag you out of your house. I mean, you're going to make those decisions. But when that is issued, that's a view that there's hazard by remaining in that area. And so we just want everybody to know that, and hopefully be able to make the best decisions for themselves and their families.